Before you fly to Bali and buy a villa as an investment, there are 10 things you need to know. Let me walk you through it. Number one, Bali is an all-year tourist destination. It is always warm, but the weather does differ between the months. So there is a rainy season, but it's actually not that bad. I always have a good time here also during rainy season. Sometimes there's a little bit of a shower or even heavy rain, but that can also happen during dry season. So that's, for me, not a good reason not to come, and for many others the same. So there are tourists coming. There are busy months like July, August, very, very busy. Around Christmas, New Year, also very busy. And there are months like March, November with a lot less tourists. So you do have differences between the months, but it's not so much the weather that drives it, but actually the vacation times and the seasons in the countries where the tourists come from, like Australia, Europe, United States. So when they are going on vacation in July, August or Christmas time, that's when it's really busy. Now, why is that relevant? Your villa will always have some level of occupancy, not like a ski resort, for example. So there's always some revenue coming in, but the rates are very different. The occupancy is also anywhere between 50 and 100%. It never goes really terribly down, but the rates differ widely by factor 2 or even 3 from the lowest low season price to the highest high season. So with that, it's an all year destination, but there are a couple of months that generate the most profit, not necessarily revenue, but the highest profit, because the cost base is fairly even across the months, but the revenue is a lot higher in those. Number two, leasehold is a concept you need to get comfortable with. Foreigners are not allowed to buy freehold land in Bali or anywhere in Indonesia. Freehold meaning you own the land forever. What is allowed is a leasehold. So that's typically 20, 30, up to 50 or even more years. Typical range is around 30 years with a possible extension. And you can use that land as you wish. So you can develop it, you can build a villa on it, and you can manage the villa accordingly and generate revenue to make that a viable business. However, you do not own it forever, and the day will come that all ownership of the land as well as whatever you've built on it goes back to the original owner. Now that is a concept that is a challenge for many foreigners who buy land or are grown up with a mindset to buy land with the idea of appreciating assets. So you buy land and the value of that land goes up, or you build a house and the value of that house goes up. In a leasehold scenario, you know at some point from your point of view, your value in it will go down to zero. So that is something you have to get your head around. Now, when you think of it as a pure business, the upside is you know beforehand how much will it cost you during that time. So you pay upfront for, let's say, 30 years leasehold, a fixed amount upfront, and then you have certainty how much it will cost you on an annualized basis throughout that period. And by knowing it will be zero at the end, you don't have the illusion that the land price goes up. Now technically the value of that land might not go down in a straight line from where you buy it or lease it to zero. It might stay a bit when the prices go up and then go down more rapidly, or the other way around, depending on how the land prices develop here. Now, nevertheless, it's actually from a business point of view a very easy way to calculate the cost, the annualized cost of the land as well as your property, and that gives you also a lot of certainty. And of course, leasehold is cheaper than freehold, significantly cheaper. So it can also be seen as an advantage. You don't have any illusions. You don't pay as much as freehold. Now, if you are Indonesian, of course, you can buy freehold, But the majority of the market for land in Bali is leasehold, because foreigners are owners in many cases. They have the money to develop, they have the will and energy to invest here, and that's why 70% of the market is actually leasehold. If you buy as an Indonesian here freehold and build your villa on it, you have to understand, if you ever want to sell it, you can only sell it freehold to another Indonesian or leasehold to a foreigner. So you're participating in a much smaller market if you go for freehold, if you can go for freehold. And that makes it also for Indonesians interesting to look at the leasehold option. So leasehold, mathematically very easy, very simple to calculate. Emotionally might be very difficult to digest, depending on your cultural upbringing and your feelings towards real estate and increasing values. But that is something you need to get your head around if you want to play the real estate game here in Indonesia. Number 3, not all villas are profitable. This is really important, because it means if you buy a villa or if you build a villa, there's no guarantee that your villa will be profitable. So if profitability is important to you, and it might not be for everyone, then you need to do a lot of analysis. There are a couple of factors that influence the profitability of a villa significantly. One is the location, one is the size and structure of your villa, and the third is how well is it managed. Now note that 2 of these factors are actually determined when you buy or when you build it, and you cannot change it afterwards. So you have to do a lot of analysis before you buy. Afterwards, you're stuck with a lot of decisions. Number 4, developers. If you buy off-plan, you buy from a developer. The business model of a developer is to sell for more than the cost they have when they build it. So they get land somewhere, they have subcontractors to build and design and sell. And their profit margin is the difference between their expense and the revenue, meaning what you pay for it. And you always have to keep that in mind. For them, the objective is to have a price, a sales price as high as possible and cost as low as possible. That means they might cut short with when it comes to quality. Now the price, on the other hand, they want it to be as high as possible, which of course is the opposite of your interest. But you have to really keep that in mind. They explain you the price as its reasonable market price, others charge just as much, and it's worth it, you will make so much money of it. That's all not relevant. What counts for them is the cost of construction and land, and what counts for you is the revenue. If other people pay for similar objects a similar price what they're asking for, it still doesn't mean it's profitable. So you have to make the judgment, is it a profitable investment if you buy it at that price? The developer does not make that analysis, he is not qualified, and he also does not have a proper interest in that. He just wants to get the highest possible price. So always keep that in mind when you're dealing with developers. I'm not saying they're bad people, but you do have to understand their business, the business model, and their interests. Number 5, the price of real estate. There are different ways to come up with a price for a piece of real estate. One is the cost of construction of the land plus a certain profit margin. That is a very basic way to look at it. Another one is to look left and right. What are other developers charging for a similar property? Now that might of course be higher or lower. If it would be lower, then it's probably for the developer not a good idea to start that project. But if it's higher, he might consider to increase his profit margin and increase his price. Now with all that said, the value you get is typically not a criteria to set the price for the developer. It is more a marketing tool. He tells you this is what we're charging and this is the value you get out of it. Now this is typically completely made up, sometimes made up well, sometimes made up not so well. But the value you get should be your criteria for the decision. Do you want to buy it at that price or not? From your point of view, you should make that analysis and use that to determine what it is worth to you. And then, of course, there's a resale market. That is a very small and intransparent market. Some objects are on the market for a year or longer, others are snatched up right away. So, and of course, you never know what's the actual price the buyer paid for it. You see the asking price maybe somewhere on the internet, but after negotiations, the price might be something else. So there's very little transparency, and you don't really know what the right price will be. So you come up with, again, the similar strategies. You look what a current developer is asking for it, so that gives you one benchmark. Or you can look at what's the value you get out of it, and it's another benchmark. And then you can come to a conclusion, is it a good deal for you at that price or not? So resale, very intransparent. Some people are asking for insane numbers, and these objects are just sitting on the market, but it's such a small market that it doesn't really help much. There's a lot more transparency in the off-plan market, where a lot of developers asking for very similar properties, roughly the same price or differing prices based on location, quality, size, style, and all that. Number 6, interest rates. Bali is a cash buyer's market, so be prepared to buy everything in cash and no mortgage. The reason is it's very hard to get a mortgage, and if you manage to get one, the interest rates will be so high it will destroy your business case. It can be like 13% and more. You will have to pay cash, and if you ever want to sell your villa, the buyer will also have to pay cash. So that's a very different model than what you might be used to from your home market. Now that, on the other hand, gives also a lot of stability to the prices here, and it's less dependent on the interest rates and less fluctuating. No owners are forced to sell because the interest rates go up and they cannot get a mortgage or they cannot extend their mortgage. That does not happen. So if you have a mortgage, the cost of owning that property is directly related to the interest rate of your mortgage. If you buy cash, that connection is only in your head and not on your bank account. That makes it a bit more disconnected, and it's still there. The cost goes up because of lost opportunity. You can also get more for your money if you put it somewhere else. These days, you can invest your money without any risk in treasuries and get about 5% on a US dollar basis. That was not possible a couple of years ago. So you're missing out on that opportunity of getting 5% by having your money invested in a villa. So with that, your cost goes up, but it's not as tangible as a mortgage payment on a monthly basis. And that makes it a bit more distant and delayed and dampened impact on the prices of real estate here in Bali. The interest rates have gone up massively in the last couple of years, from nearly zero to, well, significant, maybe 5% or more, depending on currency and collateral. And that has a very, very high impact on the cost of everything, cost of owning your real estate. The revenue did not go up accordingly, so your margin, your profit margin, is being squeezed. And that makes real estate a lot less profitable, and it might not be a good investment anymore at today's interest rates when it was a couple of years ago. So you always have to keep that in mind when you do your calculation. The rules of the game have changed now significantly, and you need to take that into account when you come up with the calculation of what is a reasonable price for your property. Number 7, location. There are only a few locations in Bali that are worth to invest in with regards to profitability. These are places like Canggu, Seminyak, Ubud, Uluwatu. Location is a small but significant part of the cost of your investment, of your entire villa. The land is of course a lot more expensive in a good location than somewhere in the forest far away from everything. So it's small but significant, or significant but small. Don't just see it as a high cost of your land, see it also as a high value of your land. People typically don't book your villa because of the villa, but because of the location and the sites and attractions and the restaurants and the parks or waterfalls or beaches nearby. If you don't have that, then you have to invest a lot more in your villa to make it worth going to that villa in the middle of nowhere. So with the cost of the location, you get all these amenities that are then provided to your guests, and you don't have to maintain them. So you get a lot of value out of that, and of course a cost. So you have to really make that calculation. Is it worth it? That of course is very different from one location to the other, but in many cases a villa makes no sense in a remote location, but a lot of sense in a good location. Of course you have to tailor it to that location and the price. So you don't build a huge park and a huge pool in a location where the land is very expensive, it's like downtown Canggu, but in a remote location you can have everything a bit bigger. So the cost needs to be managed, but do keep in mind you get a lot of value out of the land, out of the location of that land, and that comes without maintenance. So it might be the cheapest way to add value to your villa. So consider the location of the land you're looking at and think of it as macro location as well as micro location. Macro, is it in Canggu, close to the beach, far from the beach, in Ubud or the north of Bali, somewhere very far away? How long does it take to get there from the airport? That will be a criteria as well. But also consider the micro location. Is it close to a road, a busy road or a river? Is it noisy? Is it prone to floodings when there's heavy rain? All these things. You want it quiet, safe, but still central and easy access to the attractions nearby. Number 8, work. A villa investment is often marketed as passive income, but that's not my experience. That is far from the truth. There's a lot of work involved. In theory, all that work is outsourced. Like you outsource to a villa manager, you have people cleaning it, maintaining it and all that. Nevertheless, there's still a lot of work that stays with you. And that is, of course, stuff like selecting the outsourcing partners, reviewing the contracts, checking the accounting that everything is right, but also doing quality assurance and acting if anything is not done as it should be. So if you have someone who's supposed to clean everything, but guests are complaining that the towels are dirty, for example, then you need to act, because no one else is doing that unless you outsource even the quality assurance, which is unusual and also a bit risky. So there's a lot of work that stays with you. So don't think it as a passive income stream, but think of it as a business that you're building. At its core, of course, is real estate, and it's very capital intense, but you do have to turn that property into a business, and that's a lot of work and requires also some skill and experience in real estate. Number 9, emotions and stress. In my channel, I speak a lot about the financial aspects, profitability of real estate investments, but there's also emotional aspects, and quite a lot of them. It can be a roller coaster ride when you have trouble in the construction or with guests. Profitability is not right, you have unexpected costs. So it can be really stressful, and there will be times when you wonder, why did you do that to yourself? There will also be times where you're quite happy with having that investment and you're happy in it and proud of it. So think about, how do you deal with this kind of stress, and is it the right thing for you? I believe it is a perfectly valid reason to walk away from a financially good investment if you think the stress and the negative emotions that are attached to it is not something you want to have in your life. And number 10, risk. There's a lot of risk involved. There are a lot of things that can go wrong and a lot of things will go wrong. So be prepared and really do a proper risk assessment, manage your risk, and evaluate how much risk you are able and willing to take. Think of the development time. It can be delays. The developer might go bankrupt or might deliver bad quality or way too late, or the construction falls into itself at the end of the construction period and it takes another year. Think of the impact of the pandemic to the tourism here in Bali. Think of the volcano that had every couple of years some kind of eruption that heavily disrupted the air traffic here in Bali and had a massive impact also on tourism. So a lot of things will go wrong. Any repair can really cost you a lot of money and also a lot of revenue. You have to understand the risks, analyze them, and accept them based on a very solid understanding of what the risks are and what is your ability to take these risks, and also is it worth to take these risks. There's no point in accepting a risk even if you have the money and the ability to stomach that when there is no reward for taking that risk. So risk management is absolutely key. Don't just think of all the people who made a lot of money in real estate and became rich and wealthy. It's not easy money. It's not free money. A lot of people became rich with real estate, that is true. But a lot of people have lost a lot of money with real estate as well. So be careful. The amounts we are dealing with here are very large, and that might be something you're not willing or able to accept for yourself. And number 11 out of 10, so consider this one a bonus: reliability of the income stream. As I said, a lot of people invest in this real estate to get a passive income stream. Once everything is set up, the money will just be coming in, and they hope to get that money steady to fund their retirement, to fund their lifestyle, to fund their day-to-day expenses. But keep in mind, it's not a reliable income stream. There will be stretches where you are not getting any money. Let's say there's a repair on your property, there is some bigger risk like the volcano eruption, pandemic, anything really, big tax bill change here, tourists are not coming. There's a variety of reasons for unexpected expenses or loss of revenue, and you might have a couple months where you're not being able to pull out any money out of your investment. So keep that in mind. It should not be your only source of income. While the idea of a steady passive income stream is of course very attractive to all of us, that is not possible if you have only one property or everything, all eggs in one basket, all your properties in one country, in one area. So you need a kind of diversification across asset classes, across countries. You need this kind of diversity in your income streams if you want that as a steady source of income to fund your day-to-day expenses. So these were the 11 or 10 plus 1 most important things you should consider before you are investing in real estate in Bali. Let me know what you think. Is anything important missing? Anything you would like to add? Please leave a comment below.